How one man stopped a civil war and built a republic, the same architecture, civilizational scale. Every solution reveals the mind that built it. Before we talk about Medina, before the Constitution, before the Republic, we need to talk about a rock, because the rock is where the design signature first becomes visible. And once you see it, you will recognize it everywhere that follows. The year is 605 CE, Mecca. The Kaaba has been damaged by flood and fire. The tribes of Mecca are rebuilding it together. The reconstruction is going well, until they reach the final act, the Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone, sacred to every tribe. Whoever places it in the corner wall completes the rebuilding. Whoever completes the rebuilding has a claim no other tribe can match. 4 major tribes, 1 stone, 1 placement, 3 losers. The negotiation collapses immediately. Every tribe has equal standing. Every tribe has equal pride. Every tribe has generations of competition behind this moment. The dispute escalates from argument to drawn weapons within days. They are about to kill each other over a rock. Not really over the rock. The rock is the surface. Underneath is a competition for relative tribal standing that has been running for generations and has no resolution mechanism. An elder proposes a solution. The next man to enter the sanctuary will be the judge. They wait. The next man to enter is Muhammad ibn Abdullah, 35 years old, merchant, known across Mecca by 2 titles, Al-Amin, the trustworthy, As-Sadiq, the truthful. Note what those titles mean. They are not titles of power. They are titles of character. Every tribe in Mecca has independently arrived at the same assessment of this man. He is the one person in the city whose judgment all parties will accept. That is a rare social position. It requires decades of consistent behavior across factional lines. It cannot be manufactured in a moment. It is earned in every transaction, every dispute, every interaction over a lifetime. He is told the situation. He does not deliberate long. He asks for a cloak. He spreads it on the ground. He lifts the stone himself and places it at the center of the cloak. Then he asks a representative of each tribe to take a corner. Every tribe lifts the stone together. Every tribe carries it to the wall. Every tribe places it. The honor is not divided. It is made indivisible. There are no losers because the category of winner has been dissolved. The weapons go away. The Kaaba is completed. Mecca does not go to war with itself that day. Now examine what just happened analytically. The presented problem was, which tribe places the stone? A lesser intelligence solves that problem and creates a war. Because the presented problem is not the real problem. The real problem is, how do you resolve a status competition between parties with equal standing when any direct decision produces a loser with a legitimate grievance? He correctly diagnosed the difference between the presenting problem and the actual problem. He designed the solution at the level of the actual problem. The stone placement was just the mechanism for delivering the solution. This is not luck. This is not inspiration. This is a specific cognitive capacity. The ability to look past the surface dispute to the structural problem underneath and then engineer a solution that addresses the structure rather than the symptom. And notice the design principle of the solution itself. He did not pick a winner. He did not appeal to a higher authority. He did not impose a resolution. He redistributed the structure so that all parties could inhabit the outcome simultaneously from within their own framework without losing face. Multi-framework compatibility built into the solution before the prophethood. Before any claim to divine authority that could have been used to simply override the tribal egos with religious weight. He solved it as a man, with intelligence, social reading, and structural creativity, which means the governance capacity was already present and operative independently before revelation began. The same person who will later produce the Sahifat al-Madinah is already visible in the Cloak solution. The design signature is identical. Do not impose, redistribute the structure so all parties can inhabit the solution from within their own framework. Hold that signature, because you are about to see it again at a much larger scale. Now we move forward 15 years to a city 400 kilometers north of Mecca, a city that is eating itself alive, Yathrib, later called Medina, a city of approximately 10,000 people, multiple Arab tribes, multiple Jewish tribes, a complex web of alliances, debts, and blood obligations that has been generating conflict for generations. The immediate wound is the Aws and Khazraj, two Arab tribal confederations that have been locked in retaliatory blood feud for over a century. Each act of violence generates an obligation for response. Each response generates a new obligation. The cycle has no internal exit mechanism. The Battle of Bu'ath, fought approximately 617 CE, leaves both confederations so exhausted and depleted that neither can achieve decisive victory over the other. But the feud does not end. Exhaustion is not resolution. The structural condition that generates the violence is unchanged. Here is the key diagnostic fact about Yathrib at this moment. It is not leaderless. It has multiple leaders. What it lacks is a leader whose standing is accepted across factional lines. Every internal candidate for arbiter is already embedded in the conflict. Every solution proposed by an insider is perceived as benefiting their own faction. The city is in chronic deadlock not because it lacks intelligence or will, but because the structural position of a trusted neutral does not exist within the existing social architecture. This is a specific and recognizable problem. It recurs throughout history wherever plural communities exhaust their internal conflict resolution mechanisms. The solution always requires the same thing: an external actor with enough standing to be accepted by all parties and enough actual governance capacity to convert arbitration into durable structure. In 620 CE, at the annual pilgrimage season in Mecca, a delegation from Yathrib meets Muhammad. The first meeting produces interest. The second meeting, at Aqaba in 621 CE, produces a formal pledge. The third meeting, in 622 CE, produces the invitation. They are not asking him to conquer them. They are not submitting to an empire. They are inviting a specific person with a specific demonstrated capacity to come and solve a specific structural problem that they cannot solve themselves. The invitation is a political contract. He brings governance capacity. They provide a base of operations and a pledge of protection. Both parties understand what they are exchanging. He arrives in Yathrib in 622 CE. The Islamic calendar begins here. Not at the first revelation, not at the first prayer. At the moment a governance architecture is established in a specific place with a specific community. The calendar marks the political event, not the spiritual one. That is itself a significant design signal. The tradition understood that the spiritual and the political were not separate domains. The calendar begins when the operating system has a city to run on. Now watch what he produces in response to the invitation. The Sahifat al-Madinah, the Constitution of Medina, produced within weeks or months of arrival, a written document establishing the terms of political community among all the inhabitants of Yathrib regardless of religion, tribe, or origin. Before we examine the content, note what this is structurally. It is a written constitutional compact, produced in Arabia in 622 CE. The Magna Carta is 1215 CE. The United States Constitution is 1787 CE. The concept of a written document establishing the terms of political community and the rights of its members will not appear in Western political thought for another 6 centuries. Now the content. The document establishes that Jews and Muslims form one ummah, one political community, with the believers, while guaranteeing to each their own religion. The civic unity and the religious difference are not in tension. They are simultaneously institutionalized. It establishes shared defense obligations across religious lines. Jews and Muslims share the cost and duty of common defense. If the city is attacked, everyone defends it together regardless of faith. But religious practice remains completely separate. You fight together, you pray separately. It establishes dispute resolution mechanisms. Conflicts between members of the compact go to God and to Muhammad for arbitration, not to tribal custom alone, not to any single tribe's authority, to a shared process with a neutral arbiter. It establishes that outsiders cannot be offered protection against members of the compact. The political loyalty runs to the community, not to external tribal affiliations. Mecca cannot leverage its tribal connections to split Yathrib from within. It establishes protection for non-combatants, the wounded, the women, the spaces of worship, protections that will not appear in the laws of war in Western tradition for over a millennium. Now examine the design principle again. The document does not attempt to dissolve existing identities. The Jewish tribes remain Jewish. The Arab tribes retain their tribal structures. The pagans are not compelled. No one surrenders what they are in order to join the compact. Instead, a constitutional layer is built above the existing identities that all parties can sign without surrendering their own framework. The civic obligation is shared. The religious and tribal identity is preserved. Multi-framework compatibility. At political scale, the same design principle as the Cloak solution. The same design principle as the Niyyah accounting system. Different actors inhabiting the same structure simultaneously from within their own frameworks. This is not coincidence. This is a consistent design intelligence applying the same foundational logic across completely different domains and scales. The individual moral actor and the plural political community face the same structural problem. How do you build a system that does not require uniformity to function? The answer in both cases is the same. Build a structure coherent enough that different actors can inhabit it simultaneously without being required to become identical. Now, the document we are describing has a problem. We do not have the original. What we have is transmitted through Ibn Ishaq, writing approximately 150 years after the event. The content is internally coherent. The political logic is consistent with everything we know about the Medinan context. Multiple independent transmission chains preserve substantially the same text. The scholarly consensus treats it as authentic in substance. But the absence of the original is itself a data point. Apply the forensic principle. Someone's loss is someone's gain. Find both records, read them against each other. The gap is where the transfer happened. The documents that survive from early Islamic history are heavily weighted toward theological and legal material. The political constitutional material, the documents that would most clearly demonstrate the pluralist proto-constitutional character of early Islamic governance, is precisely what did not survive in original form. Who benefits from the Sahifat al-Madinah being accessible only through filtered transmission rather than as a primary document. Anyone whose interest lies in characterizing Sharia as inherently totalizing and incompatible with pluralist governance. Because the founding document of Islamic political thought, unmediated, is the single most powerful refutation of that characterization that exists. The content is preserved enough to be academically acknowledged. It is suppressed enough to never function as common knowledge. That is not full erasure. That is the more sophisticated operation. Keep it technically available. Ensure it never becomes culturally operative. Same operation as the last sermon, which we will get to in a moment. But first, how do we know the document reflects a real political situation and not a later idealization? We know because the stage is independently verified. The Aws Khazraj conflict is documented across multiple transmission chains. The general condition of pre-Hijra Yathrib as a community in chronic internal deadlock is not contested by any serious historian. The political problem the document claims to address was real, was chronic, and was exactly the kind of problem that would generate exactly that kind of invitation. The document fits the wound it claims to have been written for, and we can judge by fruits. The city held, the coalition functioned. The framework was operational enough that its eventual breakdown required specific acts of betrayal by specific parties, not structural collapse from internal incoherence. A framework that fails only under active betrayal rather than under its own weight is a well-engineered framework. that is verifiable from the historical record even without the original text. Now, the last sermon, 622 CE to 632 CE. 10 years of building, the community grows, Mecca itself falls, largely without bloodshed, in 630 CE. The general amnesty is declared. You are free. By 632 CE, Muhammad is at the peak of his authority. The pilgrimage of that year draws the largest gathering of his lifetime. Tens of thousands, from every tribe, every region, every background that has entered the framework. He delivers what will be his final public address. And what he says is not a theological summary. It is a constitutional declaration. No Arab has superiority over a non-Arab, no non-Arab over an Arab, no white over black, no black over white. Except by taqwa, read that in its political context. He knows what he is looking at in that crowd. The Meccan elite entered Islam en masse after the fete. The same Qurayshi families who ran Mecca as a commercial oligarchy are now inside the framework. Their networks intact, their capital intact, their social standing intact. He can see what they will do with it. The universalist principle that the whole project was built on, the principle encoded in the Sahifat al-Madinah, the principle that Arab ethnicity is not the load-bearing variable, is about to come under pressure the moment he is no longer present to defend it. So he says it out loud, in front of everyone, at maximum authority, at the moment of maximum audience, with no ambiguity and no qualifier. This is a preemptive constitutional amendment, spoken into the record at the highest possible moment precisely because the capture attempt was already visible on the horizon. It could not be erased. So for 14 centuries it has been handled differently, academically acknowledged, cited in religious education, and never made culturally operative in a way that would threaten the ethnic hierarchies that reasserted themselves within a generation of his death. Same operation as the Sahifat al-Madinah. Preserved technically, suppressed functionally. Now the capture attempt itself. Because understanding what happened next is essential to understanding why the architecture survived it. The general amnesty after the fete. Magnanimous, politically brilliant in the short term, structurally dangerous in the long term. Because general amnesty without structural transformation does not dissolve an elite, it absorbs it. The Qurayshi commercial aristocracy, the families who had fought Islam longest and hardest, entered the framework intact. Abu Sufyan, his son Muawiyah, the entire network. Within 30 years of the Prophet's death, Muawiyah is running the caliphate from Damascus. The consultative leadership model is replaced by hereditary monarchy. The first Islamic dynasty is founded by the family that spent a generation trying to destroy Islam. This is not coincidence. This is the standard pattern of elite capture. The movement cannot be defeated from outside, so it is absorbed from inside. The same network, the same logic, the same operating system. New container, same contents. The Umayyad Caliphate is Qurayshi commercial aristocracy with Islamic branding. Its design signature is identical to the pre-Islamic Meccan order. Hereditary, Arab supremacist, centralized around a single family's interest, and simultaneously the pressure from below. Persian and non-Arab populations converting to Islam in massive numbers, producing scholars, jurists, scientists, mystics. The actual intellectual infrastructure of Islamic civilization. Being told simultaneously that Arab origin confers additional standing regardless of taqwa. A direct contradiction of the last sermon. Lived every day by millions of people who had memorized the last sermon. The Alid claim emerges as the structural alternative. Legitimate leadership through the Prophet's family. Simultaneously a theological position and a non-Arab legitimacy claim. Because Ali's lineage through Hussein connects to Persian royalty, the Shia framework gives non-Arab populations a legitimacy structure that bypasses the Qurayshi Arab aristocracy entirely. The Umayyad project understands this perfectly. Karbala, 680 CE, is the response. Hussein ibn Ali, grandson of the Prophet, marches toward Kufa with a small party. He is met by a much larger Umayyad force. He is offered terms. He refuses to give legitimacy to what the Umayyad project has become. He and his companions are killed. Karbala is not primarily a succession dispute. It is the Umayyad project eliminating the one lineage that could anchor a non-Arab Islamic legitimacy framework with unimpeachable prophetic connection. Kill Hussein, and you close that door. The theological dispute that will divide the community for 14 centuries gets its foundational violence from a military operation whose actual logic was ethnic and political before it was theological. The last sermon said no Arab has superiority over a non-Arab. Karbala was the answer. And yet, the architecture survived. Here is why. The operating system was not stored in institutions. It was not dependent on the caliphate functioning correctly. It was not housed in buildings that could be taken over or burned. It was embedded in daily practice, in the 5 prayers, in the intention formed before each act, in the accounting system that runs in every individual regardless of what the caliph in Damascus is doing, in the community structures that reconstitute themselves from individual actors carrying the same design principles. The Umayyads captured the political layer. They could not capture the distributed layer, because the distributed layer does not require a center to function. This is the civilizational resilience feature. The same feature that operates at the individual level, the actor who carries the operating system internally and does not require external infrastructure to run it, operates at the civilizational level. Communities carrying this architecture can survive conquest, displacement, and systematic suppression while maintaining coherent identity and ethical function, because the operating system runs on the person, and the person carries it everywhere. The rock in Mecca, the constitution in Medina, the sermon at the peak, the capture attempt, the resilience, one design intelligence, one consistent principle, multi-framework compatibility, no imposed uniformity, structure coherent enough that different actors can inhabit it simultaneously without being required to become identical, from a stone placement to a city to an empire to a distributed civilizational operating system running across 14 centuries and over 1 billion people. Same architecture. Civilizational scale. Next episode. The architecture gets tested at its hardest. The Ottoman implementation. The millet system as Medinan constitutional logic scaled to empire. The 500-year siege that tried to contain it. And why the same suppression pattern is still running today. Please like, share, and subscribe.